Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Things We Know. I'm Lisa Callahan.
And I'm Kari Morin. And today is a very special episode for Mother's Day dedicated to our mothers in honor of Mother's Day.
This is even a bonus pod, y'all.
Yay. Happy bonus.
Happy bonus, happy Mother's Day. Lo and behold, here we are working on our day. Which is not really, we're recording this way ahead of time, but and wouldn't it be just like a mom to actually still work on the day that's dedicated to her?
That's the truth.
So to full transparency, we started this and we had to really go in a good groove. And then I realized I didn't have my mic on. So we're starting over. But you asked a good question when we did it the first time, which is how do you like to celebrate Mother's Day? So I'll start it with you. Let's go backwards. How do you like to celebrate Mother's Day?
Well, I like to think of it as my performance review day with all those handmade cards. That's always so nice. Is it a
360 though? Do you get to also review them
and get peer reviews? Like I get to ask other moms in the neighborhood. No, yes, I better not in the neighborhood.
I love that idea.
I know, because my friends would be a lot, more objective. Well, maybe not, but my kids are great at that. They went to a school that just really nurtured the like the handwritten card, just the expression of what I really appreciate about you. And I love it. My kids have very specific ways they do them. Griffin uses all the colors. Miles uses one ballpoint pen. Peter might pick a theme to it, but it's really sweet. And I save them all. So that's usually my favorite part of Mother's Day.
Do they do like breakfast in bed for you and that type of thing?
They have many times, but I think there's times where I want to get up with the sun and go for a hike or a walk. Yeah. So that's not necessarily going to be what I'm doing. It'll be interesting to see what happens when this day actually comes. I don't know, but what's cool is Peter will be home in that the very short time that he's home from school before going off to his internship. He'll be home for this. So
that's awesome.
We'll see.
We'll see what happens.
He's the chef of the bunch.
Oh, nice. Yeah. For me, I mean, in the past, we have gone to like a restaurant that I like or whatever, but I'm like you. I get up before everybody else. I'm not going to sleep in for breakfast in bed, so I'm going to get up and do all my same stuff. But it is interesting because this year is one of the years, I guess this is probably the third year this has happened, where Charlotte, she was born the day before Mother's Day, when she was born 17 years ago. So yesterday was actually her birthday. And so there are most years now, somehow this weekend tends to be her birthday weekend. I always get a couple where they are two opposite weekends. But yes, and we were laughing last time because it was like, Charlotte. But
yes, like Marsha.
Right. But of course, Charlotte's like my twin flame. So of course she would pull focus.
Yep.
So good.
When you asked me about breakfast in bed and you said, yeah, I like to get up early. Have you ever had it where they are trying to do it and you're in bed just going, gosh, I am so ready to get up. Yeah. That I remember that when they were little and that was funny. And I finally was like, it's okay.
And then it's like soggy toast.
Yes. And then they climb in and they want to be in there, but
that's so sweet. Yeah, no, that's never been me. I've always been the earliest riser in the house, so no expectations of that.
Yeah.
So we wanted to start by just talking a little bit about our moms and what we appreciate. And we were going to do kind of a little biography. And the reality of it is that could go on and on forever because our moms are amazing. So we're going to jump off with just sort of a sense of what are three things you love and remember or remember back as a child. I guess for me, it's actually remembering about your mom. So why don't you start?
Okay. So my mom, Patricia Ann Roney, is her maiden name. Morin is her married name. She is 81 years old. Mm-hmm. She is from a big Irish Catholic family, oldest of six. And I grew up with lots of cousins back east. So she's got that great sense of humor. But she started as a mom, like she had her first kid, my brother, at 21. That's the same age as our boys.
Yeah.
Crazy. So she's been doing this 60 years now. And that just occurred to me when we were preparing for this. So the three things, I mean, like you said, there's so many, but the three things that stand out to me, I think would be her warmth, her like intelligence, and her communication skills. So the warmth thing, the things that come up for me, do you remember Lon's nightgowns? Lon's.
No.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure people listening, I can't be the only one who knows this. So longs, they were those flannel nightgowns. They were like really pretty print. They sometimes had lace on them.
Okay, I know
So
what you're talking about. Yeah, of
she loved those. My dad would get her a new one. You know, I don't know if she needed a new one every holiday, but once he figured out she liked those, get her one.
course.
And oh, I used to just love hugging her in those. She's just so like she's literally physically warm.
Mm.
Which is funny. On a Mother's Day poem Miles wrote me when he was little, he was like, "Your skin is like a heater." It's funny. So I must have that too. But she was warm in so many ways, right? The hugs, the big brown eyes, the just warm welcome at her house. She's super inclusive. So things like that. Like she's just this great hostess, great cook. She'd probably expect me to mention her cooking, so I will, if because she's a listener.
I
She
know
loves
she's a
us.
fan. I'm so
I know.
excited.
She's a great cook. Like that just almost goes without saying if you know her, but just her warmth. There's just that hearth that Pat Morin is, not just to her kids, but to her grandkids and her nieces and nephews and all that. So that's one. The whip smart thing. I love to remember that she was salutatorian, I think, at her college. She graduated pregnant and married. And
awesome.
she was salutatorian, and we have it on an actual album record where we can hear her in her voice. She used to also be a lector. So she has this great speaking voice. She's a really methodical thinker. She's very fair. She's written a lot of op-ed pieces to local papers. But I remember once in college writing an econ paper, and I called home for my dad, who was, super smart and always was on top of stuff like that. She said he's not home from his trip. He was a pilot, but have you thought of this, this, and this? And I wrote my whole paper listening to her. And I remember feeling bad that I was calling to ask him things that she was more than capable of helping me with. And so that kind of stood out to me about, something I wanted to mention. And then the third thing, her communication, especially when it comes to love. She's so good at conveying love. She's so good at communicating that even over long distance. She writes beautiful cards. She prides herself at picking out the right card with the right message. And she's just really good at thinking of things ahead of time, being thoughtful, asking questions, communicating so people know what to expect. So I think that those are the things about her I so appreciate even more so now.
Yeah, I love that. Were you too close?
It's such a funny thing to answer because I think, because you and we grew up in the 70s and 80s. So like I had a lot of privacy or not privacy, but like I was unsupervised a lot. I was the youngest.
A lot of autonomy.
Yeah, a lot of autonomy. And so she was busy. Even before she went back to work, she used to run everything. Like she was that kind of volunteer extraordinaire with the organizational skills up the wazoo. So she loved us, and she made sure we had meals together, and she made sure we behaved, but she wasn't super aware of what was going on with me unless I was in trouble or needed something. So, I mean, I think I was a pain in the ass sometimes, and so, about like, I want to wear shorts, even though it's winter or something like that. And, but I will say, as the youngest, my siblings were away, either in college or just adulting. And my dad was commuting a lot to Denver. So she and I were like roommates when I was in high school, and we got really close then. So yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what's your relationship like now?
She's super dedicated mom and grandmother. She's widowed and lost my dad. And I feel like in these 12 years, sometimes I feel overly dedicated to us. Like I want her to do some things for herself, but she really, really just loves to spend time with family, whether it's her siblings and their families or her kids and grandkids. She just recently bought a house, so it's kind of fun to see her have her own project, her own palette, if you will, with her garden and all the things that she loves. So she visits. She's a great support. She's super supportive. She's even good at communication with texting and emojis and social media with her grandchildren. So it's great. She can even master the emoji and send me cute, funny things. So I feel like she's good at staying close, even long distance. And I appreciate it. I love our time together now.
I mean, quite frankly, we have not had this discussion very much. I mean, obviously, you guys have heard in past pods about our origin story, and that my mom is a big piece of that, and her passing. But listening to you talk about your mom, I'm like, a lot of it is very, very similar. So that's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Oh, good. Well, then we
yeah.
get to talk about yours. What are 3 things about your mom?
Yeah. So my mom's name was Marilyn Hetzler Bishop at one point, and then she remarried and passed away as Marilyn Mills. She was also
Ooh, I like that name, Marilyn Mills.
I know, it's fancy. She got married at 21 and had me when she was I guess she was probably like almost 22, because she had me almost exactly a year after they got married. Yeah, so I guess that she was 22. And so, yeah, same thing. We're only 22 years difference. And so there was a lot of, so I think there's, there are siblings that are 22 years apart. It's rare, but still there was that sort of sense of growing up together, especially because my parents got divorced when I was 13 and she was like, 37 or something like that. So to watch her go through her dating years in some ways at the same time I was fascinating. 3 things I remember. I was trying to think about it. So my mom was super loving, super supportive of my sister and I, which is fascinating based on the relationship she had with her mom. So I could say more about that in a second. She was gorgeous, absolutely stunning. From every picture I've ever seen of her. And when she got older, actually around the time that she got divorced, she started letting her hair go natural. So she was salt and pepper. And then she ended up with like just white hair. And so she always stood out in a crowd. And then the big thing that jumps out at me about my mom is how much she changed. She could be the poster child in some ways for this pod, because once my stepfather passed, and she moved, kind of like your mom, she moved and bought her own house down in Mason by my sister. And she just stepped into probably who she always was. But first she was married young, and then she was a single mom raising 2 teenage daughters. And then she was remarried. And so it was like somewhere when she widowed, she just had no fucks left to give.
That's
she
awesome.
Started doing things that she would have never done before, and really blossomed in her final years, which was cool. So, yeah, so going backwards, super loving, super supportive. My grandmother was not. My grandmother was probably a narcissist, definitely an alcoholic, complete pain in the ass, and really mean to my mom. I think my uncle was much more the golden child, which was weird because he was also the black sheep in some ways. So, part of
prodigal child.
yeah. John could do no wrong and my mom could do no right, and yet my mom was the one there at the end taking care of her and all that stuff. But, yeah, so I always have reflected on, I don't know how my mom became who she was when that was not modeled for her in any way, shape, or form as a mother. She had a really good relationship with her dad, but like my mom and my grandma could not be more different, and my mom always worried that she would turn into my grandma. And I would say to her all the time, Mom, there is literally no way on God's green earth you're going to turn into Rita. You just can't. You can't. You're not. I know. Even her name, it sounds like the kind of person she
formidable.
Was. It was, yeah. Rita was a piece. So that's always struck me. I've thought of that for years and years and years around my mom. Yeah, gorgeous, absolutely. It was interesting with my mom because she was very insecure. I know she knew that she was pretty. You just couldn't not know that, but she never capitalized on that and had ginormous insecurities that I was becoming a coach. I was a new coach when mom was still alive. And so we talked every week, and they were always like 2.5 hour phone calls. And she'd often be like, I feel like I should pay you because I'd be coaching her around some of this stuff. So it's striking to me, and it just speaks to, just because somebody looks the way they look, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes around that. And then lastly is really how she stepped in. My mom, she grew up in the 60s, but she was not one of those. She was a mom, she went the stay-at-home mom route. She didn't go the feminist route. And so they didn't really vote when I was younger. And then when she remarried to my stepdad, he was a Republican. So she just kind of went that route. And no, I'm not going to say, I was going to say he was a good Republican, but again, a whole nother pod. But he was old school Republican, not like what's out there now. And she just decided like she needed to step into her own. And so, she not only started voting her conscience and in her own best interest, which was, more democratic, but she started volunteering, and she ended up being a poll worker for elections, and she volunteered for Hillary's campaign, and she volunteered for Aftab Purval, who is now the mayor of Cincinnati, when he was running for Congress. And my mom would have never done that stuff when I was younger. So to watch her blossom in her mid 60s to 70s, amazing.
That's pretty cool. You're making me realize, like, my mom is just at 81 making new friends, like going out and meeting people in her new neighborhood. It's so cool. You were talking about how your mom had you so young, and my mom too. She was young. She actually thought about being a nun. So I think we've discussed how you could get away with things as teenagers because our moms were kind of clueless. How would you describe your mother-daughter relationship when you were a teenager?
It was. If my sister's listening to this, I can hear her hard eye rolling as I'm saying this. Amy and I, let's put it this way, Amy and I's relationships were completely different with my mom. And mine, I think, was pretty good. But again, my parents got divorced when I was in the 7th grade. And so 7th through high school, Amy and I were classic latchkey kids. She was working, she was dating. And so the reason I was able to get away with stuff was because she wasn't around. Not only was she not around, by no fault of her own, like, I don't remember.
Should it work?
I don't remember feeling like, poor me. Like, it just was what it was, but I think, she wasn't around. And so we had a lot of autonomy. But our relationship was good. I do remember one time, and this is really only one time, where I got so mad at her. I yelled and I called her a bitch and I slammed the door, and that did not go over well.
I bet.
I was more scared though of my dad than my mom, because my dad was quiet. And so when my mom is like me, like, she would get mad all the time, whereas my dad didn't get mad very much. So if he was mad, it was sort of like, watch out.
I think if anyone in my family is listening, they know this. You just reminded me that I called my mom a spaz once, thinking it was just she and I home, because I told you my dad was gone a lot my senior year. He didn't want to move us, and he had to commute to Denver as a flight instructor. So I was, curling my hair and my mom's trying to get in, and the drawer was open, and I was like, wait a second, spaz, or something ridiculous. And I closed the drawer, and the door comes flying open with my dad's arm, grabbing me. Do not call your mother a spaz. So yes, I was scared of my dad.
Yeah.
Would not have called her that if I knew he was home.
Right. But I love that though, when a mom and a dad's relationship is such that the dad swoops in and says, you do not talk to your mother that way, or vice versa. I think it's really important for parents to be on those same pages and to really support each other. You may have diverging feelings later that you discuss, but in the moment, I really feel like you should be on the same page.
Yeah, go Jim and Pat on that moment. Yeah. So what parts of her mothering do you think you've borrowed or you've continued?
I think the supportiveness. I think, and even the way, like, we talked about this in the parenting pod, I am not a universal supporter, right? Like, if I like what you're doing, or if I, like, Charlotte's an actress, Liam's a musician and an artist, they're both writers. Like, if it's my thing and I can relate to it, I am super supportive and just like, I'm your biggest cheerleader. And if I'm not going to say it sucks, because it probably doesn't suck. It's just not my bag. And so I feel like I always knew that if my mom didn't like something, it wasn't because meant nothing about me,
Mhm.
right? It just meant that it wasn't her thing. And she would she'd get curious about it, which I have done too. And, okay,
Mhm.
it's not my thing, but I
Yeah.
think that's a big thing that I think about. And all of our kids, we've always done, we're very demonstrative in saying, I love you, and hugging and all of that. And that really came in handy at the end for both my mom and my dad, because I felt like nothing was left unsaid for either one of them. So being demonstrative in our love for each other was definitely something I got from her. What about you?
Oh, I would say, it's funny. I was going to ask you that question. I don't think I thought about that answer, but I think the thing I borrowed from my mom is that, that communication around unconditional love. Yeah. Got barking dogs. So, I'm probably just like her. I might go, be quiet right now. I was on mute. But that reminder when my kids mess up. Now, my mom didn't mess up in high school the way we did at all. But she always made sure we knew that we were loved no matter what. What I like to say to my kids is, you haven't done anything we haven't done. Let's just, like, this isn't about you, being like unlovable, right? So I feel like she gave me those kind of threads. This brings us to our second part that we wanted.
Wait, I want to say one more thing though, because I love this, because we always do this. Like, you made me think of something. You made me just think of something, which was, there was a time when I was on the phone with my mom, and I got off the phone, and Charlotte said to me, I hope that you and I have the kind of relationship you and grandma have.
Oh,
I know. And I told her that, of course, that just like that sent her over the moon, because that's true. And I do think I have that kind of relationship with Charlotte, which is great.
That is so wonderful. I'm so happy you just shared that. So part 2, our motherhood, we wanted to cover that today because it's our Mother's Day too. Happy Mother's Day, Lisa.
Happy Mother's Day.
So it's our own wild and amazing journey being moms ourselves. And I have reflections and things I celebrate about you as a mother. But I'm curious, how would you describe the type of mom you are or aim to be on most days? And I want you to read exactly what I wrote here.
I was like, okay, well, first off, she wrote what she wants me to say, so I'm going to ignore that. She wrote, I'm the cool mom. Ha ha ha. Okay, here's the thing. This is what I'll say. I think, like anything in my life, I am authentic 100% and honest 100%. And I do have a temper, and I do go 0 to 60, but I also turn around and repair very quickly. And not because I feel like I have to, it's just my nature. So, if Charlotte and I are bickering at each other, or Liam and I, we turn around and say, I love you right away afterwards. Darren used to laugh, or would still tell you that when he first started hanging around our family, my sister, my mom, and I, he thought we all hated each other because we were constantly sort of like loud and yelling, and it's just how we communicate. And I think I have that aspect as well in my life. So it's the authenticity around, as I just said earlier, like, I'm not going to bullshit you, I unconditionally love my kids in a way that I never experienced before having children, right? And I don't think there's unconditional love without children, if you have children, right? So that's the main thing that I think of as a mom. And I am the cool mom, but it's really interesting but in LA.
You're not supposed to say that.
Oh, that's right. I'm not allowed to say that.
I tried to trick you into saying it.
Sorry. But it's funny, because it's interesting. I would think of myself as like, I'm pretty laid back, we take the kids to fun things and that sort of jazz. But the reality of it is, being a mom at a high school of performing arts kids, like, all the moms are cool. Like, so that I don't really see that way. There was something else I was going to say about that, but it's escaped my mind. So
I would argue maybe it's a stereotype, but I would argue that you could be out of school with a lot of overbearing moms or people who are trying to live through their kids.
True.
In that kind of setting. But you're right. I went to Charlotte's play. Those were some cool moms I met there.
Yeah, they're pretty laid back. It keeps popping in my brain and then leaving my brain what I want. Oh, I know what I want to say. What's fascinating is in Chicago, I was one of the more laid back moms. Now, granted, we were at a Catholic school back there, but I was one of the more like, our kids have, because my husband's a horror writer, my kids have grown up watching R-rated movies, horror movies all their life, really. And we, Darren even did a short film where we had a severed arm in our house for very many weeks. I know, nice. You can see Kari's face right now. But out here, I'm actually super strict, which is really interesting. So that was a shift that happened out here that I was not prepared for. I'm the mom that does like go, yeah, you're not doing that. Whereas a lot of moms out here do allow things that I don't get.
Yeah. To me, my first impression of you when I met you as a coworker, and I barely knew you, was that you were going to dedicate a lot of time to supporting their endeavors. Like, I was first aware of you, being on set where Charlotte was doing auditions.
Yeah.
But over time, and as I've grown and as I've known you, like I really admired your natural separation from all that. And just I could imagine that you could have stayed, as involved, and it feels like you've just allowed their autonomy to blossom, but you're still there. You still feel like their biggest fan who gives a lot of honest feedback.
Yes.
When asked.
Yeah. Yes, that makes sense. And I guess some of that comes from, Charlotte was a champion Irish dancer back in Chicago. So I've been in that kind of world of stage moms or dance moms for a long time. And I just chose not to be that way. I wanted the best for her. I wanted to support her, but I wasn't going to go above and beyond in a way that didn't feel right to me or felt like would really benefit her. I wanted her to grow, and same now, like with her acting, I want her to grow in her skills, not because I got her extra training or extra this or that, So we're definitely not helicopter parents in any way, shape, or form. What about you? What's your parenting style?
It's interesting listening to you and thinking about some notes I made. I feel like my parenting style, which might sound silly, is intuitive, right? And that's kind of how I do things. It's intuitive. So it was a little bit dictated by birth order and personalities and, proclivities and things like that. I think had I not, been trained as a teacher and then a coach, probably a lot of my natural parenting style would have been my parents. And a lot of it was great. It was incredibly loving, incredibly fun, but very strict. And sometimes, emotional and reactive and things like that. But I think that my kids would probably tell you that I leave a lot of room for them to mess up and learn. And I ask them a lot of questions and I try to listen more than I speak. And that's been over time. So I think, I've learned to trust my intuition more and figure out who needs me to lean in, who needs me to lean away, who needs me to just be near. Because I have 3, right? And they're, even though they're all boys, they're so different and they have such different personalities and ways of being in the world. And if you heard our episode about human design, I've got, 2 very different types of emotional manifestors and then a pure generator, a pure something generator, manifesting generator. So these are, incredibly soulful, sensitive people. And I'm super sensitive. And so I think creating a really loving, safe space where there's a lot of laughter, there's a lot of, music here because people like to play instruments. There's a lot of, their different interests. I think we're good at giving each other space. So I feel like I'm intuitive about when to, lean in and when to lean away. I would say that's my style. I'm very much about holding them capable and holding them accountable. That's where some of the strict stuff comes in, where I want to be really, really clear with boundaries there because I think that makes us all better. So yeah. And I do think like, another part of my parenting style, which is humor, is I probably taught them sarcasm at too young of an age. So we kind of all have to deal with that sometimes. Like that we all, where Peter would be like, we're in the car. It's like, you said that's great, but you don't look like you think that's great.
Astute.
Yes. And I also think, life stuff has created the parenting style that I've had. I think that we have a strong attachment just because I'm really affectionate anyway. But our attachment has become even, stronger, maybe not even super healthy during some of these hard years that we've been through with medical crises. I'm not sure, but because of that, we all really check in with each other a lot. And it's interesting how it's mimicked in my kids. Like my younger two are so affectionate. And I have to say, I mean, since it's a Mother's Day episode, but like when we're actually recording this, I want to remember that the day before this, totally unbidden, both boys said to me, "You made my day today. Thank you so much for that text." Or, "I love you so much. Thanks for thinking of this." And it was unbidden. And it was like, oh, that's rare. I mean, if you have teenagers, you're probably like, "Shut up, bitch, don't brag." But I'm going to say it because it happened. Those younger two are very affectionate and very loving. My older one, he's less affectionate physically, but he is the one who will walk through the room and stop and come back and go, "What's up? You seem like something's bothering you." And I'll be like, "What?" Like, "No, I'm fine." He's like, "Come on, mom, I know you." And like, "Oh, okay." So I think that attachment style has lent itself to us being, having each other's temperature. And again, knowing when to give each other space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before I reflect on you, I just want to insert here that you haven't missed a pod. She referenced the human design pod. That'll be in July.
Oh, sorry. We've talked about it on other episodes.
We have, but there is a very cool human design one coming up in July. But I didn't want you to go back and go, "Wait, where's that human design one?" And so I think first off, I think what I love about what you just said is you recognize everything that I recognize in you, which is great. Sometimes I think there is that sense of, wait, what, me? And so I love that you're owning all the stuff that I absolutely see, which is you do have three very different boys and you have given them each their own lane and you support them. You dip in and dip out the way they need you to be there. You love so big. And that's true of you as just every human, I think, that comes in contact with you. You actually used the word hearth around your mom earlier. And Kari and I are in another group where that was put on, that word came to mind for you as well. And I think that's exactly right. When you think of a hearth, right, it's like everybody's around the warm fire and they want, snuggles and stuff. And I just think every human that knows you probably feels that way about you, but I'm sure that trickles down. That's why boys, because boys are not normally that demonstrative. Liam happens to be as well, but it speaks to us as moms that we have allowed our sons to have feelings and emotions and not fall prey to the boys don't cry scenario. So yeah, for sure. I reflect everything you just said about yourself, and I just take it to the next level that you're that way with every human being that you're around.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. I want to kind of shift into like things that have inspired us, now, because we're shifting into this new place. I think as young moms, and if you're a younger mom listening, or if you're a mom with younger kids, is what I kind of mostly mean. Yeah. We think like, it's like hold my earrings, right? We think like, oh gosh, this will be so much easier when they're older. And and the truth, look at you. Keep thinking that.
Good luck.
That, as our kids become adults, it's just a shifting. It's a different kind of tired. It's a different kind of, aching. I think, isn't it Obama? A lot of people have said this, but he was the first person I heard say it's like watching your heart walking around outside your body, right?
Yes. Yep.
So like we never stop being moms. My mom is 81. She will never stop, thinking of us, and especially like hurts her so much when one of us is struggling with something and she can't be there. So like our adult kids are going to struggle, and that's a unique pain, right? And that's where our training has been so valuable for us, I think, is just, and we've shared it here in the pod where we know how to hold that space from over here and try not to take it on, but it's so hard not to. It's so hard not to.
Absolutely. I mean, I always say this to anybody that I meet that is a new mom, because I remember that feeling of when they were little, like every time something new happened, you're like, oh, they're so cute. I don't ever want this to change. I want them to be this age forever, which logically you don't. You want them to grow up. But I say this to moms all the time. I feel like it continues to be great. Every age, every stage is fun. Liam is about to turn 21. And I am so excited to like take him to a bar and go drinking, like
it is very fun having done that.
And Charlotte and I went out to dinner the other night and I was like, oh, we can't go drinking afterwards because she's only 16. But it is, it's enjoying every stage because every stage is fun. Every stage has struggles. Every stage hurts. Having a daughter, and you and I have talked about this, when she went through a breakup, it triggered me on a level that I was not expecting, because you also, like you said, you haven't done anything I haven't done. That same thing comes up. If they struggle in a way that you also struggled at some point, it all comes flooding back.
And it is, as awesome as they are, we grew up in a time where our moms maybe weren't as aware of those things. So we didn't get parented during those moments. So it's an interesting thing too.
Such a good point.
Yeah. So yeah,
I was thinking that.
I was also thinking about the advice thing. I was listening to this, my friend Beth, her cousin is a social worker who has a podcast, and she did an episode on how to parent your kids when they're in distress. And she said the most thing that I thought of, because we know as coaches never to give advice, right? Like we're here to listen and we're here to guide and help have people find their own answers. I think as parents, we can slip into advice all the time. And sometimes they want it, they're asking for it. And she said, when your kids are hurting, we like to give advice because if we can fix the problem, then we never have to sit in that pain with them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know the name of that podcast?
Yes. I will pull it up for you because I don't have it here, but I will make sure we have a link to it.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, I think I have it somewhere here. So yeah. Anyway, so that I thought was just really powerful. This reminder that, as we shift with them for our own selves and our own emotional health, but also for them, how to sit in the pain with them and not feel it is a unique skill that I think I will continually not know how to do, but I will try.
I don't know if I don't know that I want to not feel the pain with them. It wasn't fun, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time I experience this, but that's that empathy. Charlotte did when she first broke up with her boyfriend, I was crying and she kept going, why are you crying? I'm like, because I remember this and it hurts, plus I really like this boy too. And so there's a little aspect of that as well. With Liam and Charlotte, obviously a boy and a girl, so that's different. But Liam's very communicative. So when he's going through things, he comes to me in that way. And I think with him, maybe because he's a boy versus Charlotte being a girl, and so I don't have this exact same life experience, I think a little better equipped to listen and reflect, whereas Charlotte does want advice. She's like, how did you do this? How did you navigate this? And not just boys, but just middle school, high school, all those things.
And I might argue that asking you how you did something isn't advice. You're not telling her what to do. You're responding to her questions. It is. And that's so helpful. So helpful. I always want someone to tell me how they did something.
Yeah.
I did remember it. It's the Inner Challenge podcast with MJ Murray Vachon.
Nice. And we'll put a link in.
It's episode 14, I believe. Yeah. So good. There's a great quote I found by Gilda Radner. I loved her. She's so great. She said, motherhood is the biggest gamble in the world. It is the glorious life force. It's huge and scary. It's an act of infinite optimism. I like that as a quote because I don't know. I feel like her quote sounded like both of us because we're human. We both cuss and overreact, and we have all those, all of our feelings, and we both kind of step out of things and try to repair, and we do things really well too. But I think we're our whole point is we're striving to stay connected. We're staying in the room with our kids, unattached, just able to sit in their pain when we can without fixing or deferring to our partners when that's smarter. So I feel but that ability to hold up that optimism, our ability, because honestly, again, this even goes back to the friendship one, because we have other mothers to kind of help absorb some of this with each other, we're able to hold that flag up for our kids that says this is temporary. like this, whatever you're going through is temporary. And I think that's the optimism they need, is that like, you'll get through this. You've got what you need. You have the wisdom for this.
And sort of that sense of, you don't have to believe me. Right. Like, you don't have to believe me right now, but just hold true that you will get through this.
Yes.
And, but feel your feelings. Every other pod we've talked about, like every pod we've done, like do all those things. And yes, this is temporary.
Yeah.
So we decided to each pick a song. I want you to go first. Yours is lovely.
Oh, Lauryn Hill, To Zion. Is that?
Which I assume is her son.
Zion, I think, is her first son, I believe.
With
yes.
Marley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she, I think she, like, it sounded like she wrote it when she was pregnant. I heard it when I already had Peter, but I was just a new mom. And the words, like, how beautiful, if nothing more than to stand outside Zion's door. I've never been in love like this before. Like, I remember it just squeezed my heart, because I remember thinking, I have never felt this kind of love. And I remember my dad saying to my brother when his son was born, like, now you know how much I love you. And that was that moment where I felt so loved and so infinitely loving and protective all at the same time. And that song kind of just brought all that for me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What's yours?
For those of you who aren't watching and you can't even really see it, but if you are watching the YouTube, my shirt says Hall & Oates Band Camp. This was my mom's shirt. It was my mom's favorite band. She was ride or die for Daryl Hall for sure. We got to see, that was my first concert with her. And I guess that's one other thing I think about my mom. I've seen about after I said my three things. My mom was, I used to tease her and call her a pop culture whore. Because my mom, up until the day she died, was so into pop culture and knew we could have such great conversations about what was currently happening. And so I did a lot of concerts. I saw Prince, like I did a lot of concerts with my mom. So Hall & Oates I wore this in honor of this pod. And my song is actually probably her favorite song at the time she died, which is Adore You by Harry Styles. And it's obviously Harry Styles didn't write it for his mom. The video is ridiculous. He's singing to a fish. I've never understood that video.
I know.
And I love this song. And I've come back around to it being a love song. But I remember sitting in the airport, the Chicago in O'Hare. We lived here in LAX. And it was Easter. So there was nobody in there. And this song came on. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. Sorry. We can edit this out. So this song came on and I realized it could be her singing. Because it is a love song, right? And our moms love us and we love our kids, as we've said repeatedly. So it says, the lyrics that I love about it are, you don't have to say you love me, which is teenage years. You don't have to say nothing. You don't have to say you're mine. I'd walk through fire for you. Just let me adore you. I'd walk through fire for you. Like it's the only thing I'll ever do. So it took me a long time after she died to listen to that song again. Liam and Darren and my brother-in-law had put together a really nice video for her memorial service that just the 8 of us were at, and this song plays at the end and it's just so I thought I could get through this. You
did beautifully. Happy Mother's Day to Marilyn and to you.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day to you as well.
Gosh, we want to wish everyone who's listening a happy Mother's Day, not just Marilyn and Pat and Lisa and Kari. And we hope you're spending it the way you want, alone or adorned with love and attention. I actually left on Mother's Day once to go to Zion with 2 friends, which was amazing.
Which is weird since that's the name of your song.
Isn't that funny? I know. Yeah. I just realized that too. Zion National Park. But so whether you mother humans living with you or afar, or you mother fur babies who allow you to be as attached as you want to be, or if you mother other women's children as a teacher, snaps to that. As a teacher, a mentor, an aunt, or a sister, we see you, magical mamas, and we celebrate you.
Yeah. And so to our moms here and not here, our kids, we're so grateful for the legacy that you are allowing us to have, the laughter, the lessons. It is absolutely, again, no matter how you mother, whether you have biological children, stepchildren, your aunts, all the things, any child that you are mentoring in your life, it is the best ride. It is the best job, the biggest stretch of our hearts to experience motherhood in however you do it. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode, this bonus episode of The Things We Know, and we will still be back at our regular time on Tuesday with another episode, again, of The Things We Know.
Cool. And if you're enjoying listening to The Things We Know, hooray. That makes us really happy, and we're glad you're here. And we ask you to consider pressing follow. It means a lot to us. If you want to follow the pod, you can either click on the plus side or the follow button wherever you listen to podcasts.
And if you like today's episode or any of the episodes you've listened to in the past, forward it to someone else you think might get something out of this. It's pretty easy in all of the platforms to just hit that little button and says share. You can copy a link, text it to your friends, email it to your friends, maybe to your mom for this one, and reflect back to her all the things you heard us reflect about our moms. And we'll be happy to, we'd love, as always, to hear some reflections on the Facebook page or Instagram as well.
Hooray. So long. We will see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.